You've seen their stores 1,000 times. That yellow sign with the heart, planted off the interstate, where both truckers and road trip families pull in without thinking twice. What you probably don't know is that almost every giant travel stop company like Love's has already been swallowed. Warren Buffett bought one for $13 billion. A global oil company bought another. One by one, Wall Street has been buying up the entire American highway, except for the Loves. This one family looked at all that money, all those offers, and said no, and the way they pulled that off is genuinely wild. Chapter 1. The Last One Standing. Before we get into their mind-blowing business empire, let me show you just how alone Love's actually stands, because it's the whole reason this story matters. Think about the giant travel stop chains you've heard of. There's Pilot, the biggest truck stop chain in the country, the one with the flying J signs. A few years ago, Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, bought the whole thing for around $13.5 billion. And it wasn't even a friendly handshake. It ended in a nasty courtroom brawl with the founding family fighting over the price on the way out the door. Then there's Travel Centers of America, those big plazas you see everywhere. Swallowed whole by BP, the massive global oil company, in a deal worth over $1 billion. The pattern is brutal, and it's everywhere. A family builds something great over decades, and eventually the big money players show up with a check too enormous to refuse, and the family sells, and the thing stops being a family business and becomes just another line on a corporation's balance sheet. Now, here's the anomaly. In that entire landscape of buyouts and takeovers, Love's Travel Stops is the only major highway chain left in America that is still completely, 100% owned by the family that started it. Not partly. Not. The family keeps a stake while investors run it. Completely. There is no public stock you can buy. No Wall Street bank owns a slice. No private equity firm has its claws in. 670-plus locations across 42 states, around 40,000 employees, and every single bit of it owned outright by the Love family of Oklahoma City. They are, quite literally, the only family on this highway that Wall Street can't touch. And that's not an accident, or luck, or just stubbornness. It's the result of a very deliberate 60-year strategy that turned 5,000 borrowed dollars into one of the biggest private fortunes in the entire country. So how does a family hold off the richest buyers on earth and stay independent when everybody around them caves? To answer that, we have to go back to a single broken-down gas station in a tiny Oklahoma town, and a young couple with almost nothing. Chapter 2. $5,000 and a broken-down gas station. The whole empire starts in January 1964, in a dusty little town called Watonga, about an hour northwest of Oklahoma City. And it starts small. Really small. A young man named Tom Love had just come out of 3 years in the Marines, had bounced out of a couple of colleges without finishing, and was looking for something to call his own. So he and his brand new wife Judy scraped together a $5,000 loan from family, and with it they leased one single, abandoned, run-down service station. That's the entire origin story of a $20 billion empire. One couple, one beat-up gas station, $5,000 of borrowed money. And here's the detail I love because it tells you everything about why this worked. From day one, this was a genuine two-person team. Tom ran the pumps, worked the lot, hustled for customers. And Judy? Judy ran the money. She kept the books, handled the ledgers, managed the finances of the whole operation. He drove the growth. She controlled the cash. That partnership is the bedrock the entire thing was built on. Now, there's a deeper layer to Tom Love worth knowing, because it makes the highway empire he built almost poetic. Tom was a direct descendant of the Chickasaw Nation, and his ancestors had been forced westward generations earlier along the Trail of Tears, pushed across the land against their will. Tom openly acknowledged that painful history. And there's something striking about a man with that lineage going on to build a company whose entire genius is about mastering movement across America, about understanding the roads, the routes, where people travel, and where they stop. The family's whole fortune would come from reading the map of America better than anyone else. Within just 8 years, that one station became 40 stations across Oklahoma. They were rolling. And then the entire world economy threw a punch that should have knocked them out cold. But instead, it accidentally handed Tom Love the idea that made him a billionaire. Speaking of building something real out of almost nothing, that is what pulled someone on our team to the Pulse R8 Smart Ring. It tracks your heart rate, your sleep, and your workouts straight from your finger. A week on a single charge, 100 days with the case, and it's fully waterproof. The part that got us was the price. Under $40, a fraction of what the big-name rings cost, because it comes direct instead of through the retailers that mark everything up. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to the crisis that nearly wiped him out, and the comeback nobody saw coming. Chapter 3. How a Disaster Invented the Modern Pit Stop. In 1973, catastrophe hit the oil world. The OPEC embargo slammed into America, fuel supplies got choked off, gas got rationed, and prices went haywire. For a company whose whole business was selling gasoline, this was a potential death sentence. The profit on fuel basically evaporated overnight. Tom Love looked at his stations, which made money on one single thing, gas, and realized that betting everything on fuel made him dangerously fragile. So he made the pivot that changed the whole company and honestly changed the American road. He thought, what if my stations didn't just sell gas? What if, right next to the pumps, I sold the stuff people actually need? Bread, milk, snacks, basic groceries, stuff with much healthier profit margins than gasoline, stuff that keeps making money even when fuel prices go crazy. He called it the Mini Stop Country Store, and it was brilliant precisely because it was so simple. Suddenly, his locations weren't just fuel stops you resented pulling into. They were little community outposts where you could actually get what you needed. The steady money from groceries cushioned the wild swings of the fuel market. A disaster that wrecked his competitors had just handed Tom Love the blueprint for the modern convenience store. But Tom wasn't done having ideas. By the early 1980s, he spotted another gap nobody was filling. Back then, the highway was split in two. There were gas stations for regular families, and then there were grimy, unwelcoming truck stops for the long-haul truckers, and never the two shall meet. Tom thought, why not build one place that serves both beautifully? In 1981, he opened his first true travel stop in Amarillo, Texas, and it was a revelation. Dedicated diesel lanes and big parking and private showers and laundry for the truckers, and at the same time a clean, bright, friendly store for families with kids. He united the two worlds nobody thought to combine. That Amarillo store was so successful, it became the entire blueprint for everything Love's is today. But building great stores was only half of it. The real machine, the thing that makes this family almost impossible to compete with, was being constructed quietly behind the scenes. Chapter 4. The Money Machine, Hiding Behind the Pumps. Here's where the Love story goes from nice family business to ruthlessly brilliant empire. And it's the part almost nobody sees when they stop in for a soda and some fuel. Most gas stations are at the mercy of everyone else. They buy fuel from a supplier at whatever price the supplier sets. They pay an outside trucking company to haul that fuel to their pumps. Every link in the chain, somebody else takes a cut. Tom Love looked at that and thought, why am I paying all these middlemen? Why don't I just own the whole chain myself? And so, piece by piece, the family built what's basically a closed loop, a self-contained empire where Love's controls nearly every step. They own a company called Musket that goes out and buys fuel in massive bulk, trading billions of gallons on the open market, which means Love's gets its gas at wholesale prices most competitors can only dream of. Then they own another company, Gemini, with a fleet of over 1,300 of their own tanker trucks to haul that fuel from the terminals straight to their own pumps. So they're not paying some outside hauler, they're paying themselves, and they get their fuel faster too. And it doesn't stop at fuel. They built the largest truck maintenance and tire network in the country, over 400 locations servicing millions of commercial trucks a year. So when a trucker needs an oil change or a new tire, they do it at Love's. And the efficiency behind all this is almost comical. There's a stretch where the company's revenue exploded from $3 billion to $17 billion. And over that same decade, the entire department handling the company's money added exactly one new employee. 1. They went from $3 billion to $17 billion with a treasury team of 4 people, automatically processing tens of thousands of transactions a month. That's how tightly this machine is run. But the slickest piece of the whole thing is the one nobody talks about. Love's quietly became a bank for truckers. See, independent truckers have a brutal cash flow problem. They do a job, send the bill, and then wait 30 or 60 days to actually get paid. Love's stepped in and said, "We'll pay you right now, today, sometimes within an hour, and we'll just take a small cut." It's called freight factoring. But here's the genius twist. That instant cash gets loaded straight onto a special Love's card. And where do you think the trucker spends it? On Love's fuel, Love's tires, Love's food. So Love's lends the trucker his own money back and then sells him everything he buys with it. Every single dollar loops right back into the family's pocket. Fuel, transport, repairs, banking, they capture a piece at every step. That's the closed loop. And it generates a river of cash that leads directly to the question at the heart of this whole video. Chapter 5. Why they'll never ever sell. So now Love's is a money printing machine. And when you've got a private company minting cash like that, the sharks start circling. Wall Street banks, private equity firms, giant corporations, they all come knocking with offers that would make almost anyone say yes. Remember, Pilot sold to Buffett for over $13 billion. The Love family could take a payday like that tomorrow. They won't. And understanding why is the key to this whole empire. When a company goes public, when it sells shares on the stock market, it gains a pile of cash, but it loses something it can never get back: control. Suddenly, you've got thousands of shareholders and Wall Street analysts demanding bigger profits every 3 months. They don't care about your truckers or your clean bathrooms or your 40,000 employees. They care about the next quarter's numbers. And the second your profits dip, they scream at you to cut costs, slash wages, gut the very things that made the company special. The Love family looked at that deal and said, "No thanks." By staying 100% private, they answer to exactly nobody. No shareholders, no analysts, no board of outsiders, just the family, making decisions for the next 50 years instead of the next 90 days. And this isn't just pride, it's a genuine superpower, and they use it constantly. Because they don't have to send profits to Wall Street shareholders, they can pour that money straight back into the business. Recently, they launched a remodel initiative pumping over $1 billion of their own cash into upgrading hundreds of their stores. Completely debt-free, no investors needed, paid for out of pocket. Try doing that as a public company without your shareholders revolting. They fund their own expansion, on their own terms, on their own timeline, beholden to no one. That freedom is the prize, and they value it more than any billionaire's check. But keeping an empire in one family across generations is famously where these stories fall apart. And the Loves were about to face their hardest test of all. Chapter 6. The test that kills most dynasties. Here's a statistic that should terrify any family business. Only about 13% of them survive into the third generation still owned by the family. Think about that. Almost 90% crash and burn, usually torn apart from the inside. The kids fight. The grandkids want to cash out. Egos collide, somebody demands a buyout, and the whole thing gets sold off or split up. So the real question for Loves was never just, can they hold off Wall Street? It was, can they hold off each other? And then came the hardest stretch imaginable. Tom Love, the founder, the patriarch, passed away in 2023. And then just a year and a half later, in late 2024, Judy Love, the other half of that original two-person team, the woman who'd kept the book since 1964, passed away too. In the span of less than 2 years, both founders were gone. This is the exact moment when so many family empires shatter, when the glue holding everything together suddenly disappears and the next generation starts grabbing for pieces. For a lot of dynasties, this is the end. But the Loves had quietly built something clever to prevent exactly that. Control of the entire company passed cleanly to Tom and Judy's 4 children, and instead of letting them fight over who's in charge, the family designed a structure to keep the peace. 2 of the brothers, Frank and Greg, share the top job as co-CEOs, splitting the power instead of battling for it. Their sister Jenny runs the company's culture and values, making sure the soul of the place survives the founders. The 4th sibling holds an equal ownership stake, but stays out of the daily operations, keeping things clean. And they even brought in a seasoned non-family executive as president to act as a neutral referee, so no decision ever turns into a sibling cage match. They engineered the family harmony as carefully as they engineered the fuel supply chain. And it's already working. The third generation, Tom and Judy's grandkids, are now coming up through the company. But for all the warm family and clean bathrooms branding, this empire has a harder edge too. And it's worth being honest about it. Chapter 7. The Empire's Sharper Edges. No empire this big stays perfectly clean, and Love's is no exception. If you spend time on trucking forums, you'll hear the grumbling. And a lot of it comes down to pricing. The complaint is that the stuff inside Love's stores can be marked up steeply, with some items costing dramatically more than you'd pay at a Walmart down the road. And that diesel at the pump often runs pricier than the little independent station nearby. And there's an interesting strategy underneath that. Industry watchers point out that Love's deliberately keeps its curb prices high, the price you and I pay rolling up off the highway, so it can turn around and offer massive discounts to the big corporate trucking fleets it signs long-term contracts with. In other words, the independent trucker and the regular family paying full price are quietly helping subsidize the deep discounts handed to the giant fleets. It's smart business, but if you're the little guy filling up, you're effectively on the wrong end of it. Love's has also tangled with the law over the years like any company its size. It once paid a $10 million settlement to resolve its part of an antitrust case over fleet card pricing, and it's faced lawsuits over wages and overtime from managers who said they were worked long hours doing basic store labor without proper pay. None of that, to be fair, is unusual for a company operating at this enormous scale, and none of it has dented the empire's momentum. But it's the other side of the coin. The same ruthless efficiency that lets them capture a margin at every step and stay independent is the same efficiency that squeezes the small operator at the pump. Both things are true at once. Love's is a genuinely remarkable family success story, and it's also a hard-nosed operation that plays to win. And winning, for this family, increasingly means giving a lot of it away, which is the final piece of how they've made themselves untouchable. Chapter 8. The Fortress Built on Goodwill. Here's the last move that makes the Love family so secure, and it's the one most people never connect. They've turned generosity into a kind of armor. The family has poured staggering amounts of money back into Oklahoma, a $10 million lead gift to build a massive women's health center at a hospital in Oklahoma City. Millions more for another hospital's expansion, the largest single donation in their foundation's 60-plus-year history. $5 million to the University of Oklahoma, including a beautiful softball stadium that now carries the Love's name. Tens of millions raised over the years for children's hospitals. They've woven themselves so deeply into the civic fabric of their home state that they're not just a company there. They're practically an institution, the premier philanthropic family in Oklahoma. And here's the strategic brilliance of it, whether intended or not. When you're that beloved, that generous, that embedded in the community, it becomes very hard for regulators, courts, or activists to come after you. Goodwill is a fortress, and the Loves have built a tall one. So step back and look at the whole picture. A young couple with a $5,000 loan and one broken-down gas station. A disaster that accidentally taught them to diversify. A genius closed-loop machine that captures money at every turn. A fierce refusal to ever sell a single share, no matter how many billions get waved in their faces. A carefully engineered family structure that survived losing both founders. And a mountain of goodwill that shields the whole thing. That's how you build an empire worth tens of billions. And keep every last piece of it in the family. While Pilot went to Buffett and travel centers went to BP, the Loves just kept building, kept owning, kept saying no. In an era where everything gets bought, everything gets consolidated, everything eventually belongs to Wall Street. One family from Oklahoma looked at the richest buyers on the planet and decided their freedom simply wasn't for sale. And that might be the rarest thing they own. If stories about the families and empires that refuse to play by Wall Street's rules are what brought you here, subscribe to Global Status, and we'll keep delivering them. See you in the next one.